Kalamea.
And I'm Amy Gosha.
Welcome to the Divorce at Altitude, a podcast on Colorado family law.
Divorce is not easy. It really sucks. Trust me, I know. Besides being an experienced divorce attorney, I'm also a divorce client.
Whether you are someone considering divorce or a fellow family law attorney, listen in for weekly tips and insight into topics related to divorce, co-parenting, and separation in Colorado.
Good morning. I'm Amy Gosha. Welcome back to another episode with Divorce at Altitude. Today, I have the pleasure of having an expert with us. Her name is Barbara Shindell. Barbara, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming today. And we're talking about parental responsibility evaluations today. Before we kind of jump in, why don't you tell me a little bit about your background and how you got into doing this type of work?
So I graduated from the University of Wisconsin with a master's degree in social work in 1972, so a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I had a general practice of working a lot with women and families. And then I got divorced, and I found the process terrible. And I found that didn't solve any problems. And I just really wanted to try and do it better.
Yeah.
For children and parents. If we don't take care of the parents, they can't take care of the kids.
Yeah. And how long had you been married, and how old were your kids at the time?
So we'd been together, living together, married, separated for about 12 years. And my kids were 6 and 11.
And I'm going to just stop a little bit because I think we should look kind of also into okay, and I'll start that over. So Barbara, how long were you married, and how old were your kids?
Well, I was with my partner, who I eventually married and then divorced, for about 12 years. And our children were 6 and 11 when we got divorced.
And then you said that the process is really terrible. What have you been able to do, I guess, to help people navigate it?
Well, the first thing is, to really look at the family dynamic. And in my therapeutic practice, to help people understand that just because you get divorced doesn't mean the problems that you had before aren't going to be present. And so to look at reality, like not the ideal, but what is reality and how is it going to work? And what I try and help people look at is really focusing on their children, because that's what's going to bond them together. And for children to do well in divorce, they need parents who are on their team. And even though they live in separate houses. So to really look at that and how to transform the relationship from obviously something that's not working to business where the business is raising the children.
How long have you been working with divorcing clients?
20 years.
And has your process kind of changed over time, or are there just some fundamentals that you've implemented since the beginning?
Well, I would say that fundamentals are the same. I really want to look at what's best for the children, keep the children in the front row. Like I often ask people to bring pictures of their children and display them because I want to remember who we're doing this for. It's not for the adults, it's for the kids.
Right. And I know that today we're here to talk about your role as a parental responsibility evaluator, but you also do, early intervention mediations. I know I've done that with a few of my clients. What are some of the other, roles that you play in helping people?
So sometimes I work with people individually. Sometimes I help people prepare for the PRE process. I do mediation and early neutral evaluation. It's like a continuum of services, and kind of the last show, so to speak, is the PRE. But then I also work with people to implement their parenting plans after divorce. So it's a whole continuum of services.
Yeah. And I know that we're here today to talk about the role of PRE, but maybe let's focus a little bit before we get to the PRE role, because that is, like you said, kind of the end of the road. Can you go through some of each of those areas, like early neutral assessment, some of those things, and explain exactly what you do and how it's helpful to people before they have to get into the PRE process?
Well, I often work with parents who really want to work together and they want to work out a parenting plan. And I like that process. It's an early process before people kind of get stuck and their heels dug in. And the early neutral assessment is a specific way of doing that. But the idea is that the parents remain in control. They get to make decisions. They get to work out their unique situation because it's not a one size fits all. And in that early stage, I've worked out some very creative solutions that would just never happen in court. So if parents can work together and maintain their decision making, it's always better in the end. And it's also a process of learning how to work together through divorce. But there are times when that just can't happen.
Yeah. What's an example of trying to get parties on the same page? You said that you mentioned, having a picture of the children. Like, is there another way that you kind of structure talking with parents that help them, I guess, get child focused?
So one of the things that I always do is I give each parent an opportunity. First of all, I meet with the parents in a room together. Okay. I might have met with them, individually, but most of the work gets done with parents in the room together. And that's really important because it's harder to be a jerk looking at the person you've been married to forever, right? Or to treat them like an object when they're in a separate room someplace. They're not a human being. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I give people the opportunity for about 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes to talk about their experience, like what's important to them. And it's really important because, first of all, they get heard. And second of all, the other person here's what they have to say, what's important to them. And then I ask the second person not to respond to the first person, but to stay connected to what's important to them. And then to really work on people's needs and interests. Like, what do people really want? Not how are they positioning themselves, but what do they really want? What's important to them? And usually we can come to a good enough compromise when we're working from people's needs and interests.
Yes. And even as a lawyer, I'm cognizant of that. I don't like to say that my position is, just because if you get positional, there's never going to be room for a solution, I feel like.
Exactly. When you're positional, it's like who's the biggest bully and who can tolerate, who's got more money, who can tolerate the anxiety, who's angriest. Yeah. And, I say to parents, if you can think about the children's developmental needs, because what a baby needs and what a 13-year-old needs are two different things. Right. And if you think about your children's temperamental needs, because kids are different, like some kids, they're ready to go on overnights at 5 and they can't wait. Other kids, you couldn't get them to go to a sleepover, to a friend's house. So, to look at who the children are and their temperament, and then to get your ego out of the way and stay focused on those beings who 99%, of people who I work with really love their children and really want to do what's right for them. And so if we can stay connected to that, they can get to a pretty good agreement.
And would you say that you work with people in this capacity, like pretty early on, in the, divorce, if it's a divorce?
Yes. The earlier you work with people, the easier it is to stay focused on the children.
And why do you think that is? Is it just because people get really entrenched in their positions and hurt, or
they get hurt, they get entrenched in their positions, they've spent a lot of money, that the litigation process, even with really good lawyers who are looking to solve the problem, have to be positional, so to speak. And so there's less room for negotiating. The further down the road people get, the harder it is. Now, sometimes you have to wait a little bit, like, you can't necessarily do this process the day after somebody's been served because, you have to have a little bit of time to process the emotion.
Right, to be in the spot, to be able to hear. Yeah. So at what point, if you're working with people, do you see that it's not working? What's kind of the next step?
Well, I think the next step is to get the attorneys involved. So sometimes I'll just say, okay, I think we need the attorneys as part of this process. And so just kind of do an informal mediation with attorneys present because A, they're a trusted party, B, they've got the experience and the law, and they can tell their clients, this is a good idea, or this is not a good idea for you, whatever. So, and sometimes that works, a team of people together helping this family. And I think if the family feels like one of the things about meeting together is, lawyers have heard, and therapists too, have heard about the other person. But when you actually meet the other person and, get an experience of them, there's more information in the room.
And so say you go through all of that and it's still, getting the attorneys involved it seems like, it's just not moving in the right direction.
Let me clarify that. So if I have two parents who really want to come to an agreement and two attorneys who really support that process, we can usually get to a good agreement. Because there's always going to be a moment where somebody feels loss, and when they go to their attorney and say whatever, and their attorney says, no, go back to that process, I can almost always get a better agreement for that family.
Right.
Than through the court system.
And so when we talk about the court system, the other capacity that you serve in is as a parental responsibility evaluator. What exactly is that role within a divorce case?
So a parental responsibility evaluation, a PRE, we'll call it a PRE, but it means a parental responsibility evaluation. And it's really for, as a parental responsibility evaluator, to be a neutral coming into a family, to evaluate the family system, to evaluate the individuals and make recommendations to the court. It's almost like we're an investigatory arm of the court,
right?
So we have a lot of power and no power at the same time. The only thing we can do is make recommendations to the court. But frankly, I've had in 20 years 2 cases where the judge has completely ignored my recommendations.
So most of the time they're going to rely on you as
right. And they might have everybody has a little different idea about something. And but for it's a mental health evaluation, and a parental responsibility evaluator has to be a licensed mental health professional.
Right. And in Colorado, we also have child and family investigators. What's the difference between a child and family investigator and a PRE?
Well, a child and family investigator was intended to look at discrete and specific issues, like, what school are the children going to go to, or, should the kids have therapy or some kind of other services, or, kind of a very discrete, narrow picture. And in part because a rural state, for the most part, we've got several big cities, but, there's a rural state, so that it was a lot of different people and a lot of different professions could come in and step in as a neutral investigator. So a lot of lawyers could stay in that role, mental health people do.
Yeah. And some of the history on that is, I can't remember what year it was, but they put a cap on the CFIs. So before, did you do CFI work before the cap?
Yes, when I first came to the state, it was called special advocates.
Before.
And frankly, I don't remember whether it had to be mental health people or whatever.
Yeah,
but then,
I don't know.
I don't recall. And then it turned into CFIs.
Right.
And as mental health people, mostly we did CFI work. And it kind of gradually morphed into more of a process, more like a PRE, so that the state put a cap on it, and it sort of went back to looking as a narrower, discrete problem solving, like you can't do psych testing as a CFI or have somebody else do it.
Right.
So it's a narrower focus, although I'm seeing that role kind of morph like it did before.
Oh, and I agreed. Yeah, I still do see, especially I see in the rural areas, a lot of times the judges will appoint a CFI just to do a general best interest, investigation and I guess recommendation. But it just depends. So let's talk about the PRE process. So get appointed. Usually the parties will either stipulate to your appointment or the court will appoint you. And then what happens?
So then the first thing that happens is that as a PRE, I have to file with the court a disclosure saying that I don't have social, familial, or financial ties to any of the parties.
Right.
And so that's the first thing that happens. And once that's filed, then I connect with both of the parents. And I have some general protocols that I just run through. But there's always room for meeting the specific needs of a family. So I have interviews with the adults. I have interviews with the children, unless they're quite young.
Yeah.
I observe the family in the office in a more structured kind of environment where I give them tasks to do with their family. I want to look at how they interact, how emotionally available they are to the children, how skillful they are as parents. And I also observe them at a home visit, do a home visit where it's a much less structured environment. It's their environment. And I sort of suggest that they think about an activity to do with the kids or something. And so you get to see the home, the children's bedrooms, which is really important.
Yeah.
And you also get to see how comfortable the kids are in their home and how they relate to the environment. I also usually meet with the parents towards the end in a joint interview, unless it's clear that we shouldn't, to assess their conflict resolution skills and their decision-making skills. But then also talk to collaterals and always the school, sometimes the pediatrician, sometimes not. If there's no issue, medical issues, I don't necessarily do it. But oftentimes there are medical issues, and it's when that's a place where parents often are in conflict.
Right. And when you said that, like about collaterals, just for our listeners, that's usually people that they've listed third parties that they want you to talk to or who have submitted, I guess, like a testimony, like what do you call it? A narrative or a testimony.
What do we call it? A personal reference questionnaire.
Yeah.
And we get information, third-party information from two places. One is the professionals that they're involved with. If they have therapists or if there's a really medical issue or if their kids are having trouble in school. So that's where PRE is individualized. And then we have the personal reference questionnaires, and we ask parents to select people who know them and know them as parents, because this is really focused on children and parenting. So, and it's always interesting, like how many reference questionnaires they get, who are they? Sometimes they're people who really know people very well and can be very articulate about it. And sometimes their references are people who they knew 10 years ago. So that kind of tells you something right there.
And is there, do you sometimes find where one side will give you a lot of information and then the other parent won't provide as much? Does that happen pretty frequently?
That happens. And people say, like, how many? And I have to have some humor and sarcasm. So I say, if you give me none, I won't be happy. If you give me 30, I won't be happy. I'm really looking about 5 to 10, people. And after a while, if you're doing a lot the same thing, then people are saying the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. Can you talk about like what is really a good like reference? Like what would be not just all of your, I mean, it can be your family members, but what usually is like a really good reference that you're going to pay attention to? The type of reference.
The type of reference. As I think people who really know the client, whether it's as a parent.
Okay.
So maybe it's somebody, who they've known since kindergarten and they've watched them grow up throughout the years and they have a relationship with their kids. Maybe it's somebody who's a new friend, that they've met through parenting group or something, but maybe it's, the neighbors who have children similar ages and that you take care of each other's children. So people who know you as a parent.
What about, if a parent is in therapy, which hopefully, they are, is that really helpful to be able to talk to their therapist usually or no?
Yeah, well, I said, so that's, the therapist would be in the professional realm and we always talk to we always talk to their therapists.
Yeah.
Those are HIPAA, protected people. And so we have a different, process of contacting those people. And we also look at documents that people give us. It's time and money. So when people give us 500 pages,
I know.
That's.
I always tell my clients, like, you need to organize it. It's nice to put it's something in a timeline. And if you're going to put it in a timeline, reference the document. People are using, like a communication app. Don't just download the entire record. Show the PRE what the examples of what you're talking about.
Exactly.
This episode is brought to you by our law firm, Kalamea Gosha. Amy and I describe our law firm as an innovative and ambitious trial team that pushes the boundaries to discover new frontiers in family law, personal injuries, and criminal defense in Colorado. We currently have offices in Aspen, Glenwood Springs, Edwards, Denver, and Boulder. If you want to find out more, visit our website, kalamea.law. Now, back to the show.
And what I tell people when I'm helping them prepare for a PRE is make it easy for the evaluator.
Agreed.
Do it in an organized way. Type your information, because reading people's handwriting is really
nightmare.
It's really hard. Organize it, so it's readily accessible. List the people and their contact information, because it just makes it easier.
Yeah. And I know that a lot of clients ask me, should I be sending, these 500 emails? And it's like, I like to tell them to go through it and, group the emails together, like tell your story, but make it organized.
Right. But also tell the whole story. Don't cherry pick the information.
Agreed. Yeah.
So if it's on a topic.
Yeah. Like you can't just cherry pick an email. Like you need to. Well, actually, would you say that it's better, like say that this is just a hypothetical, say that two parents were using Talking Parents, which is a communication app. Would you say like download the entire record and then just highlight the specific things the person would like to reference?
The issue is that whatever you give us, we have to look at. So if you're giving me the entire file, I think what I would rather have is several examples of what you're wanting me to look at.
Right. And then not to just give, maybe some communication before and after. So it's not just that one little.
Right. So it's your decision. I mean, if they want me to read the whole 500 pages, I'll do it, but it's their money.
Yeah. Do you find as that the evaluator, I mean, I know that my clients are super nervous and anxious about going through this process. Is there anything that you talk to them about at that initial meeting, besides the process? Like, do you find that people kind of are not as anxious as they go through it, or?
Well, it sort of depends on the person. It is an intrusive process. You are giving up some of your decision-making authority, and it's about something really important like your children, and people are nervous. And sometimes I get PREs and I go, why are these people doing a PRE? This is ridiculous.
Yeah, like what would, just in general, because that is really interesting, from your perspective as an evaluator, like just in general, what are some of the things, like the scenarios that would show, like, why are these people doing?
Well, I think they're doing it because they can't agree. They're doing it because they can't agree. It's just simple. And then the question becomes, why can't they agree? And there's usually only a few reasons why people can't settle. First of all, most divorces get settled.
Right.
And so we're working with, higher conflict, situations where people can't agree. And part of the assessment is, why can't they agree? Why is the conflict more important than their peace of mind and their children? And sometimes it's really important to do a PRE. If you have one parent who is really limited in some way for parenting, but doesn't recognize it, if there's been abuse or domestic violence, or child abuse, if there's drug and alcohol issues that really impact people's functioning, if, there's mental health diagnoses that impair, or, sometimes the family situation is just really complicated, and a neutral person coming in and kind of looking at it without all the emotion to evaluate and make recommendations.
Yeah. And I know you're super busy right now with PREs and whatever else you're doing to help families, but how long does the PRE process usually take? You're the investigative part of it.
I like to have 120 days.
Okay.
That's 4 months. You can do it in 90 days. You can do it in a weekend, and I've done that. But I personally like to see, speaking to your issue, your question about people's anxiety, if people aren't somewhat anxious, I'm curious as to why not, because it is an intrusive process.
Yeah.
People are being examined, and nobody likes that.
No.
Nobody wants that. And I like to see how people are over time.
I was going to say there's got to be something for being able to take a little bit of time, because people can only put up a facade for so long.
Exactly. And I know there's some people who do it in a very short period of time, but personally, I like to see, because if we remember what I said in the beginning, how do we make this better for children and parents? If we don't take care of the parents, they can't take care of the children, even though it's about the children. And, I want to see how people behave over time. For some people, it's giving them time to relax and be less anxious. And then you see who they really are.
Right.
For some people, as you said, they can only keep up a facade so long. And we're looking oftentimes at very concrete things, but we're also oftentimes looking at very subtle things. And so on the surface, it might look like this family's really okay, but under the surface, their communication and decision making is really bad. And that affects the children.
Yeah.
And what we're evaluating is two things, or we're making recommendations about two major things. One is parenting time, like how much time do the kids spend with each parent and on what schedule, because that schedule can be really important. And also decision making, and what kind of decisions that parents have. Sometimes if they can't make decisions together, it just slows down any benefit for the children. If they can't decide which town the kid's going to play soccer in, the kid doesn't get to play soccer that season, or plays two soccer leagues. Or if the issue is around medication, it delays the parent's ability to help their children.
Would you say parents who go through the process and are represented by counsel, would you say that a lot of them are confused about the process, or do the attorneys usually prepare them pretty well about the process?
Well, I think it's both. I think that attorneys usually prepare them fairly well for what's going to happen, but they're still in an emotional body.
Yeah, true.
And so they're in a very emotional state, and they want a certain kind of outcome. Sometimes, it's just not realistic.
Yeah.
And we tell the parents in the first 15 minutes of the first initial interview, what the rules are, even though they've read through material, they've signed it, they've understood it.
Yeah.
But to tell them certain things, like, although I'm a therapist, I'm not a therapist in this role.
Right.
I'm an evaluator in this role. I tell them that by statute, we're not allowed to intervene as a PRE, and that things will come up, and they always call and say, well, what should I do? And I have to say, remember I said X, Y, and Z.
I can't jump in that role.
Right. Yeah. I'm just going to watch what you do. That once we file the report with the court, our appointment, our legal agreement is over. And so afterwards, parents often want, they have this expectation that we're going to do X, Y, or Z, and we can't.
Right. Yeah, I know.
There's some rules that are, that are set out by, state law.
Yeah, sometimes after a PRE report comes out, though, because you are usually a joint expert, a lot of times I'll get on the phone with the PRE and get clarification on the recommendations to try to drive the parents to make to make an agreement, which I think is helpful.
Yeah.
Sometimes to understand what where the PRE was coming from, or maybe there's some clarification that I need.
Well, that's always available.
Yeah.
If the lawyers need some clarification, it doesn't change the recommendation.
Right.
But sometimes if the attorney understands more of what we're recommending, and the way people do reports very differently, but the way I do it, we spend a lot of time putting in data, like describing the parent-child interaction. What did the experts say? And then I talk about my conclusions from the data, so that the recommendations, thinking about the recommendations, I try and make it clear.
Right.
And sometimes I think about, who am I writing this PRE for? Sometimes it's the lawyers. Sometimes it's the parties themselves. Sometimes it's the grandparents who are funding the PRE.
Right.
Sometimes it's for the judge. It doesn't necessarily change what I do.
No.
But when I'm writing, different family structures are asking for different things.
Right.
And so if I keep that in mind,
Yeah.
like who
your
am I writing,
audience is.
who's my audience? I mean, it's always everybody, but
Yeah.
who's driving this?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And then the other question I had was, what happens if like an emergent issue comes up and the lawyers come to you and say, can you make an interim recommendation? What happens in that circumstance?
So first of all, let's say that there's not one size that fits all.
Right.
So I'm going to make some general statements.
Yeah.
And sometimes cases come up where you do something a little differently because you have to. But in general, I will say, I don't want to make interim recommendations because, first of all, somebody's not going to be happy about that recommendation. And then there's an appearance of a lack of neutrality.
Right.
Not that there is, but for the family, there's an appearance.
Right.
And I don't want to mess up the process in that way.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mhm.
I think the other thing that's important to talk about is when parents talk to you, is what they say confidential.
In a PRE, nothing is confidential. That's one of the things we say
at the beginning.
And it's not like we're going to take out an ad in the local paper.
Right.
But lawyers at the end of the PRE are able to ask for our file with all the underlying data. They have a right to it, and we always, if they ask for it, we give it to them. And we try and keep a complete file.
Yeah, and can you talk to me about communication procedures? Like, what does that look like in the PRE process between the parties and between counsel?
So what do you mean between the parties?
Well, I guess it would be they talk directly to you, but if the attorneys, if you're a joint expert, what happens with, do you even get communication from the attorneys during the process?
Sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. Some attorneys kind of send us a letter about how they see the case and what they want us to look.
Do you find that that's helpful, or is it not helpful?
Not usually. It's helpful in the sense that it's unemotional and it's organized. Here's the...
Maybe for some information or background.
Some background information. But, we generally kind of review all of the legal motions.
And pleadings and
pleadings and all that stuff. But we don't, so if an issue comes up that we need to have conversation, we will do it with both attorneys present, as well as whoever we're having to talk to, so that we maintain that, the appearance of neutrality, but also so everybody who's talking to us gets the same information at the same time.
Right. So it can't be construed certain ways.
Exactly. And again, depending upon the case, sometimes we don't hear from the attorneys from the moment we get the file until the moment we
issue the report.
Other times we have more communication. Sometimes an issue comes up that we need clarification on, or we need, for example, maybe after the first interview, we'll see that somebody's got a serious addiction problem. So we'll want to ask for an assessment.
Right.
So that's a time when we talk to both attorneys at the same time.
And say this assessment needs to be done.
Or that we want psych evals. We're having trouble coordinating, especially if people live far away from each other, and that we need their help in changing the parenting time, for the purposes of the evaluation.
I know a lot of clients at least are nervous when they ask me about the psychological evaluations. I mean, what utility do they have, and what are you looking for?
Well, psych evaluations give you some real underlying data about the person's mental health or lack thereof, and what areas they struggle with. And that data is, especially if there's mental health problems in a case, it's really important. I don't think I've ever gotten psych eval information that I didn't already know from a clinical perspective. However, it digs deeper and it's helpful. And it also backs up my observations.
Yeah.
And so by having the psych tests, it sometimes is really helpful in terms of determining, really unpacking what the mental health issue is and how that impacts parenting.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
A lot of times I tell people that it really is going to look at what are the areas that you need work on, as a parent, because you might have something, if it doesn't affect parenting, then it's not really going to be a factor.
Well, let me say something about that. For me, I don't know that everybody feels exactly the same way, but we know that people coming out of difficult circumstances, or they wouldn't be getting a divorce, and they certainly wouldn't be having a PRE. Or maybe they've had some issues. Maybe they've suffered from depression. Maybe they do have an addiction problem, whatever. So particularly around depression and anxiety, if people have an issue and they've gotten help and they've helped to resolve it, I see that as a positive.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I don't see that as a negative.
Right.
And so people are frightened, like, well, what if I'm diagnosed with depression? Like, so what?
What are you doing about it?
What are you doing about it? And again, to remember, everything is about how does it impact parenting time and decision making.
Right. How does it? Yeah, exactly.
And I hope the PRE, we try and tell a story, kind of a narrative of what's going on after you peel away
the onion or the layers.
The chaos and the feelings, and to try and give a story and to parents, like writing the PRE is like, I'm always thinking about how is this going to impact the parents? How can they get benefit from this information in terms of remediating it? And I go back to the first thing that I said, I wanted to do this better for parents and for children. And so I want to write it in such a way that maybe can open up people's curiosity once they're not in the defensive mode. And when I'm working with people who get PREs, we often read it together and kind of look at, even if you don't like what they said and you don't think it's true, let's look at it. Let's together develop a little curiosity and take in what is true and forget.
And one thing I tell my clients when I'm going through the PRE report with them, the findings and recommendations, is the PRE is not going to get every single fact, but it doesn't, at the end of the day, that doesn't matter a lot of times. So you can't get fixated on they didn't get a fact right.
Exactly.
Because it's a lot of information. But I agree. I think it's really not a best practice to just hand a PRE report over to a parent and just let them review it. Like I like to review it with them.
I send, when I finish, I send the report to the court and to both attorneys. And if there's somebody's pro se, they get the report directly. But at times, I can think of a couple of times where it would be very damaging to the parent to get the report. So if they're pro se, to find somebody else, like maybe their therapist, or you have to look at the family system and see see what it is, because even if it comes out in your favor, it's still somebody's looked closely at you, and
it's hard
to take it.
Yeah, you like written on paper, like what your life is like, and what people perceive, what you're perceived as, and how you're perceived as a parent, which is a huge, personal thing.
Yes.
So would you say that? The other kind of, as we kind of wrap things up, are there some cases where you've served as the PRE, maybe like pre-decree, the divorce is done. I'm just using the divorce scenario. And then something happens and then you're asked to come back in and do an update to the report?
Yes.
And is that usually just when people are looking to modify parenting time, or does that happen very often where you come back in and do updates?
It doesn't happen very often, but it does happen on occasion. And usually it's because circumstances have really changed, or somebody wants to relocate. That's always a big one. Or if a parent, has an addiction problem and has been sober for a lot of years, but then, falls off the wagon. And so you have to kind of look at it again. I'm involved, actually, I'm the family therapist in this case, where the PRE has come re-involved. It's been a case of kids, resisting or refusing contact with one parent or the other. And so the former PRE came in as doing an update because
because it's needed.
Because it's needed. And it's very helpful. It's like that PRE has a certain kind of authority and is going to say, this is what we see.
Well, and it's nice because in that kind of scenario, the PRE already has the background,
right?
Instead of trying to bring a new person in.
Exactly.
I guess. So just to kind of wrap up, you also mentioned that you help people prepare, you consult with, I guess, parents. Just what is one of the main, obviously put the kids first, but what is one of the main tips that you give parents who are embarking on this process, this microscope process?
Right. Well, what I do in that preparation is, first of all, tell them what's going to happen, and that sort of reduces anxiety. But the main thing that I want to do is have parents organize their narrative. Like, what's important to tell the PRE? Some people have so many details that you can't track it. And some people have one-word answers. And so part of the process is kind of, why are you doing this PRE? And what do you want the PRE to know? And I say part of it is helping you direct the PRE's attention on something that's important that may not be clearly available. And it's your story, it's your narrative, and to be authentic. And so I'm not trying to help them trick the process or whatever, but to be really authentic.
Yeah, one question I get a lot from clients is they say, I have all of these issues that I have with the other parent, but I don't want to look like I'm just coming in and saying that that parent is bad. So, they always ask me, what's the balance? And I usually say, like you said, be authentic, explain what the issues are, but you also should be saying what are some positive aspects of that parent.
Absolutely.
Because I do think that that's a hard balance, or that's a hard thing for parents to balance sometimes.
Well, when parents say I have a lot of issues with the other parent, usually they're organized. There are certain categories. They experience it as, like there's this and there's this, and they didn't do this and they didn't do that, and whatever. But it's usually sort of organized around certain categories.
I guess my question
help them more. It's like the attorneys prepare, how do you prepare your clients for a PRE? And what I do is like working on the emotional and the narrative and the authenticity.
I think that's good. But I do see that parents do struggle with, they want to make sure that the PRE understands what the issues from their perspective are, but they also don't want to look like they're just making the other parent be the bad guy.
Well, for most people, who are married, for most of them, they got together and there was a time when they really liked the other person.
Right.
And part of the process is maybe reconnecting with that, even though it didn't work out, reconnecting with that part. And you bring up a really important part. It's like one of the questions we always ask is, what does the other parent have to offer the children that you don't?
Right.
Because you're different people.
Right.
There's some, I assume that the person isn't all bad.
Right.
If you got together. I mean, there's always that one case out there.
But in general, as
specifically,
we're all human. We have areas that we're great at and areas that we have to work on.
Right.
So that translates into parenting too.
Right.
Well, Barbara, thank you. I really appreciate your time today. For all of our listeners, Barbara Shindell, great PRE, early neutral assessment therapist. How can people get a hold of you?
So my phone number is 303-921-6141. And my email address is Barbara Shindell, SHINDELL @Comcast.net.
Well, great. Thank you, Barbara, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey everyone, this is Ryan again. Thank you for joining us on Divorce at Altitude. If you found our tips, insight, or discussion helpful, please tell a friend about this podcast. For show notes, additional resources, or links mentioned on today's episode, visit divorceataltitude.com. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen in. Many of our episodes are also posted on YouTube. You can also find Amy and me at kalamaya.law or 970-315-2365. That's KALAMAYA.law.